Hi, welcome to week 2 of HUMA 1010, entitled Humanities, Art, and Music. I'm your online professor in this section, Professor Silbert. Welcome. Glad to be able to come to you via webcam today. And I want to give you an overview for this week to come, and hopefully I'll be able to do this each week. Right now you're staring at my library and my study at home. Yeah, there are a lot of books. By Greco-Roman standards, it's a huge library. It's pretty big, and there's more that you can't see off camera. But nevertheless, I'm glad to be able to be with you in humanities. And you know, I'm not wild about the title of the course. I said that to you in the typed introduction to week 1, Humanities, Art, and Music. Actually, what it is the creative expression, the self-reflection, the critical thinking that has occurred through time and across cultures in trying to come to grips with what it means to be in the world, what the world is, what it means to be in the world, and then who we are. And so this course really is better titled The Art of Being Human, because that's what we're looking at, is how people have chosen to be human, how they've expressed that humanity, those impulses, those drives in all kinds of expressions. You know, the introduction to your book, by the way, this is the book, right? Handbook for the Humanities, talks about, and I list it as H, small b H, that's what that means, that book, is looking at all kinds of things. It names, oh goodness, film, religion, drama, philosophy, music, architecture, any number of things. And we'll look at some or all, not all of it, but quite a bit of it in various forms during these 8 weeks we're together. And last week we looked at a couple of key ideas, and really that's where I start. My approach to the humanities is talking about the big ideas. And then from that, we look at individual kinds of things. And so the big idea last week was not only critical thinking, how we ourselves approach the humanities, how we approach one another. Remember that model that I gave you of Kenneth Burke's of identification, where we look for the shared meaning in between the world here and the world here, and that coming together, the A and the B, it's that C in the middle that we think about, and how that applies then to a work of art or a piece of music or a sculpture or a building or someone at prayer in a religious community somewhere. All those different expressions, and then how we find any of that shared meaning. And having found that shared meaning, I'm looking at my notes at this point, that we then begin to apply a process of critical thinking. And really that critical thinking is designed to do a couple of things. One, to get us to think outside the box. Remember that clip from Patch Adams where Arthur demands of Patch, "How many do you see?" thrusting his fingers into his face and ultimately trying to get Patch to look beyond the fingers. And indeed, I think there's times when we have to get outside the box. And yet, having said that, it's important that we have shape and form to what we do. That's the whole thing about drawing Mickey Mouse, is circles and ovals. That's a very specific and exact form that in combination becomes repeatable. So you need both out-of-the-box thinking at times, and you also have to have those fundamental techniques and ideas and order in order to make it happen. The third thing that's important in that is you have to get over yourself. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we all come with our own biases, our own presuppositions, our own likes, dislikes. That's that going back to that model, right? But we need to find a way to let the other, in this case it may be a piece of music, it might be a work of art, speak on its own terms as best as we can do that, given the fact that maybe it's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years old. or it's a kind of music that I just can't stand that music. You need to give it its own breath and then engage it. And hopefully, you will have a moment of aesthetic enjoyment. That's that moment when things come together at one, right? And you are somehow meaningfully, purposefully engaged. It may not necessarily be beautiful. It may not be necessarily something you like, but it was meaningful to you. It was purposeful, just like that painting I saw in the museum in Princeton. I've seen thousands of images of the crucifixion of Jesus. I'm a minister after all, right? But not like that. That one caught me up short. And it led to a profound moment for me that was aesthetically enjoyable, aesthetically meaningful. Your posts this week, those of you who have been going at it, have indicated similar kinds of experiences in your own life circumstances. That's great. And those posts, those weekly discussions are critical for success here, right? They're going to represent at least a quarter of your grade. So you've got to be able to post. And there are rules for the posting. It's on the website. Look at the announcements page. It's spelled out there. It's also spelled out in the discussion forum. Make sure that you respond with an initial post to my question or my comment in the discussion thread by Wednesday each week, right? And then you're standing back and then responding to what happens with your post as others read it, as others respond to it. You aren't alone in this at this point, just you and me. It's you and me in a living room with the others of us that are in this class together. And we're all pitching. And so, by the way, if I respond to your post with a question, yeah, I do expect a response to that question. I expect you to come back to me with an answer, right? It's the same kind of thing where if you're talking in a room full of people and you make a statement, somebody says, I had that experience too, or wow, what do you mean by that? I don't quite get what you mean. It's that dynamic in reality that we're trying to do virtually in the discussion thread. So I expect that kind of activity. Okay? I'm looking for it. Now this week 2, we continue the process of big ideas, because that's how I look at the humanities. It is this huge world of ideas that get enfleshed then in particulars, whether it's a work of art like Golgotha by Rapin, or it's a sculpture, or it's an architecture, a building, or some other activity that is expressing that fundamental movement of humanity, right? So in this process this week, we're looking at 2 really big ideas. The first of these is immanence, or transcendence and immanence. And I focus on Plato and Aristotle, 2 great Greek thinkers to do that for us. And there's a PowerPoint there, and that's where you should start this week, with that PowerPoint on transcendence, Plato's transcendence and Aristotle's immanence. To go along with that, I have some support videos. One is a claymation of Plato's allegory of the cave, which gives an idea of that world of ideas and his thought about how that works as support and background. And then there's also, from the Khan Academy, a really neat video where the Khan Academy actually looks at the painting School of Athens that I reference in my PowerPoint to get us going. Right? On the one hand, you've got Plato with his finger pointed up to heaven, looking and saying, it's about the things that are above and beyond us, the transcendent. And on the other hand, you have his student, Aristotle, looking at him and saying, no, Aristotle, it's about the stuff that's here, close at hand, right under our fingertips. That's the immanent. And between the transcendent and the immanent is a world of human expression, trying to get a hold of some things that we can't articulate except point to them beyond us. We point at something bigger than ourselves. Or we're getting a hold of that which is right there and trying to see it in a new way that we had never seen before. That's one of those big ideas. The other big idea is Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher, German philosopher from the 19th century. In a book called The Birth of Tragedy from the Gift of Music, he talks about the Apollonian and the Dionysian. And he references the god Apollo and the god Dionysius. Apollo, the god of the sun, of order, of logical development through the day, as the sun comes through the day on a particular path, right, through the sky from dawn to dusk. So Apollo is, in mythology, drags the sun with his chariot across the sky, referencing that idea of order, fundamental development. Nietzsche talks about that in terms of the head, of rational thinking, of orderly process. On the other hand, Dionysius, of course, is the god of wine. Party! And the god of wine and god of the earth is looking for that spontaneous sort of party spirit that's filled with passion and emotion, serendipity, not advanced planning. And he references it, tends to reference it to our emotions. So between our head and our heart, there is various ways we express ourselves. And people have expressed themselves in the humanities. To get that understood better, there is, let me look at my notes here. You've got to look at the chapter, the special reading I give you from a different textbook. It actually was the old textbook to this course, called The Art of Being Human. The 8th edition. It's chapter 2, and it's about the Apollonian and the Dionysian. It gives you a good foundation for what I'm trying to get at here. Read that chapter. In fact, read that first. And then from there, you can look at the videos that I have there as examples of how the Apollonian and the Dionysian unfold in our lives in the everyday, from My Big Fat Greek Wedding to another clip from Patch Adams, also a really interesting video from the Metropolitan Opera that is a short clip of the famous Ride of the Valkyrie from Richard Wagner's Ring Cycle, Die Valkyries. And I put that in there because Richard Wagner, the great musician, composer, Nietzsche looked to him in that time as sort of, that's it. It's the combination of the head and the heart in a robust way through music and the power of music and the word and enacted spaces and the drama. That's what he was trying to get at, that he felt there needed to be more of. It wasn't a cut and dried reality, but something that had passion as well as reason. And so this clip is really an interesting take from the Metropolitan Opera Company from, I think, 2010, 2011, on that famous piece of music of Wagner that Nietzsche would have certainly heard in his day. You know, part of getting over ourselves is to recognize that in 1872, when he wrote his book, and in 1876, when Wagner first produced that piece in its whole components, all of its components together, and there were no MP3 players, there were no video captures, there was simply live music. And that's the only way you got it. But boy, what a ride that must have been for them in that time. So make sure you look at that. And then, having looked at those things with regard to that chapter, or that special chapter, look at the assignment for this week, which is to write a paper on the Apollonian and the Dionysian. And what I'm asking you to do is to find 2 ads online from an e-magazine or some kind of a web source that is promoting a product, selling a product, right? I want you to find one that is expressive of the Apollonian ideal, coming from the head, analytical, making its case, and one that is appealing to the emotions, the Dionysian. If you look at the PowerPoint on the AD ad project, which it means Apollonian Dionysian advertisement project. You'll get that PowerPoint. You'll get good examples of what we're talking about. What I want you to do is choose an Apollonian ad and then develop a page long or page and a half long rationale for why you think it's Apollonian. That should be written prose, not bullets of information. I want to hear you. I want to see your reading and writing. I want to look at it. So write out your rationale for why it's Apollonian for that ad. And then I want you to place the Dionysian ad in, cut and paste it, both of them, and then tell me on this one, why is this ad Dionysian as far as you know, right? Defend your answers. Convince me that this is a Dionysian ad. And then, having done that, give me a page where you compare and contrast the two between each other. How are they similar? How are they dissimilar? How there may be elements of the Dionysian in the Apollonian. There may be elements of the Apollonian in the Dionysian. Put it there in that comparison and contrast section. That's a Word document that I expect you to put up to the Blackboard shell so I can grade it. And that should be in no later than Sunday at 6 p.m., Sunday, March 22nd. So that and the discussion thread for this week, which is on the Apollonian and the Dionysian, I want you to jump in, make sure you post by Wednesday, and then be replying and be responding to others. If I'm asking you a question, to me, but also to others. You're not just with me. You're in a room of others virtually together. We are this class, HUMA 1010, which, for my money, is about being human, the art of being human. So, look forward to hearing your responses and for you doing your work. Take care.